What's up guys, Chris here with another Four Knights of the Apocalypse manga chapter review, and I gotta say, this chapter really was really good, but it also flew by. Literally, I read it in less than 5 minutes. That's how quick this chapter was, despite it being a full 20 pages. And in all honesty, once again, I feel like this is setting up to a potential reveal of Sin's true power, but it also sets up a really desperate situation that the characters are currently in, that they have been trying to avoid since this whole mini-arc has started. Now, before we get into the actual video, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really does help. Also, check out my Patreon and Coffee accounts if you want to support the channel more directly. And also, follow me on Instagram and Twitter for updates on future videos and just to see what the hell I'm doing off of YouTube whenever I update for certain projects or whatever. And with all that said and done, let's get right into the video. Four Knights of the Apocalypse, Chapter 47, Final Blow of Desperation. And before I get into the actual chapter, I like this cover image of the 4 Dark Talismans against the 4 main characters, as it literally shows who basically helped win their fights. Nauseams beat Elgin, An beat her opponent, Dolo got beat by Donnie, and now it's looking like Percival might fight off against the leader of the Dark Talismans after he showed up at the end of last chapter in probably the most menacing way possible. But anyway, this chapter begins right where we left off, where the Dark Talisman's leader manages to pull up right behind Percival and the others without them sensing him, grabbing the sword from behind Percival, and then beginning to swing it as Percival, looking in utter fear and shock, tries to react to it. But at the very last second, Percival trips on his cape seemingly, and his helmet is hit by the sword at full force, knocking Percival down, as Donnie, with the command of Sin, manages to pull the sword out of the leader's hands and bring it back to them, and toss the leader of the Dark Talismans over to the other side of the field. But then he actually manages to do some quick somersaults and grounds himself, softens his landing, and gets back onto the ground. It's revealed that Percival did get hit and nicked in the forehead, and he has a light concussion thanks to Nauseans' quick thinking. He's starting to do some, doctoring. I don't know why I said doctoring. That's not even a real word. But anyway, once again, if Percival didn't trip when he did, he would have gone flying, maybe even suffered a more gruesome blow. So whether or not he ended up doing this out of sheer coincidence or something made him trip, I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, I like how Sin ends up introducing this leader of the Dark Talismans. Sin knows everybody, so let's see it. He is called Thunderclap Fittich, so that's his name, Fittich, the leader of the Dark Talisman. As he gets up, he menacingly grabs a pebble and tosses it at Donnie, as he kind of stops it with his telekinesis. But at that moment, Fittich realizes the effectiveness of Donnie's magic, 25 feet, which in the last chapter was told that was in fact Donnie's range. So he threw something else at Donnie, and Donnie was unable to react to it, and it hit him square in the face, full force. And I like how this also explains a bit more of Donnie's power, as he can touch things with his telekinesis and move them, but only if he can visually see them. So when Donnie caught that first pebble, Fittich threw, from what I can tell, another pebble outside of Donnie's sight, so he couldn't use his telekinesis on it. And man, that is a huge amount of blood on Donnie's head. He must also have like a minor concussion or something, because he is bleeding a lot. But yeah, Nauseans gonna stop the bleeding. But I like how Fittich is showing up to his henchmen, basically telling them that they should be ashamed for calling themselves Dark Talismans. And hell, even he said when Arthur told him to kill these children, he hesitated, because if he wanted to end their lives, he wanted it to be precise and painless. But now things have changed. Since they've humiliated the Dark Talismans to this degree, he wants their deaths to be painful, but only after they taste true despair as it twists their face in horror. So yeah, he really didn't want to kill these kids, and if he was going to do it, he was going to make sure that they did it quickly and painlessly. But now that they've kind of been, well, humiliated to this degree, and basically all 3 out of the 4 of them were defeated in some pretty hilarious manners and humiliating manners to them, it makes sense why I just want to make them be painful and in horror. And just like that, Fittich raises his hand, and who is to come to his side but Elgin, the first Dark Talisman that the group managed to defeat in a pretty life or death situation. And yeah, I have to admit that is pretty dramatic irony, because even Sin said, this guy is probably going to end up coming back to basically get revenge on us in the end. Why don't you just kill him? And I know Percival didn't want to kill anybody despite him not being redeemable, but yeah, this just is coming back to bite them in the ass now. But now Fittich reveals an incantation orb, and from what I can tell, it is a healing orb. He tosses it to the ground, and a sphere opens up, healing all the members of the Dark Talismans, bringing them back up to full health completely healing all the wounds that they have come to gain during these confrontations. And yeah, they're all back at full health, and now they're basically cornered while the Dark Talismans are back to the strength that they were at the beginning of this arc. And Nazian's An and Donnie are like in utter shock and despair because literally they had to separate these guys, and they were in some pretty decent matchups to begin with, managing to take out Elgin with good teamwork despite being in a desperate battle. An and Donnie managed to take out 2 of the Dark Talismans, with An using her advanced swordsman skills and using her truth-seeking abilities to her advantage to take out that Dark Talisman she was facing. And Donnie manages to fully realize what his magical power is capable of, and he manages to defeat Dolo in that way. And just like that, all 3 are in utter despair, and confirming the fact that 4-on-4, the fight won't do anything to them. They're done. Their journey's ending. An's crying that she probably isn't going to become a holy knight like her mom. Nazian even saying that he won't achieve his dream of being a master apothecary, but he's glad that he was here to the end with Percival. But Percival takes a stance holding his sword, holding the dragon sword, saying that he's not giving up. He'll never give up. And despite it being pointless, he states that he's going to protect everybody, and he doesn't want to lose anyone he cherishes ever again. And I like how this is going back to the first chapter with Percival having a devastating loss with his grandpa. So in this desperate situation, pretty much similar to his situation with Ironside's first meeting, he doesn't want to give up, and he wants to face his opponents head on to save his new friends. And I have to admit, this was a really good moment. But just like that, Percival's hope powers initiate, giving him a huge influx of power, much to Feditch's shock. And Sin says, "Well put, Percival. Wallowing in despair won't build anything. Just keep struggling up to the bitter end." As Sin just says, "I trust you, Percival, because you're the Knight of Prophecy, a Knight of the Apocalypse," as Sin just smiles right at Percival. And I like that, because, you know, honestly, Sin hasn't really smiled with his eyes open in like that kind of trusting manner from what I can remember, but I like this. Sin has so much faith in Percival that it's giving him a big influx in power. And just like that, with Percival's powers increasing and Sin saying that, Donnie, Nazians, and An all kind of come back from the grips of despair and say that they believe in Percival. His power will overcome despair, and they'll never let these guys snuff it out. And just like that, Percival's powers just begin to rise and rise. Their hope is swung within him as he launches towards the Dark Talismans, combining his magic power with his sword, launching a long sword magic attack at the Dark Talismans. And as they're questioning what's going on, Dolo uses his impact ability to try and hit Percival. But thanks to Sin, Percival uses his defense mode, turning into a giant Percival bubble to block the impact of, well, Dolo's impact. Percival manages to soften the blow. He still falls to the ground, but he did kind of outmuscle Dolo. And just when it seems that Elgin was planning to tag in, saying that he can still fight, I like how Feditch has one panel just staring at his opponents, as with just a few words between each other, the despair between the children vanished from their eyes. And so, with sign language, he states, "Start with the head." And all Dark Talismans understand what he's going for as they all start charging at the kids. Sin is telling them to spread out and not to bunch up. And just as the kids separate themselves to try and spread out, the 4 Dark Talismans land. But they land surrounding Sin, stating that he is the commander, ending the chat. And I have to say, once again, you keep teasing us, Nakaba Suzuki, please. If you're gonna show us Sin's true identity, you better do it at the end of next chapter or something like that. Because with all this teasing, we really need to get Sin's true identity, like, right now. You've been teasing us for like 3 arcs straight. Just do it already. But yeah, that was the end of the chapter. This was basically the all is lost moment for this arc, with the kids basically being all injured and facing all these enemies that they struggled with in the last like 5 chapters, to the point where strategy was the only real reason they managed to beat them in the first place, and utilizing their powers to their fullest potential. Now, Percival brings them back from the pits of despair with his own words, and Sin's trust in Percival, giving a big influx of power to Percival himself. And it shows just how much they all trust each other and they trust Percival's strength. So I'm curious to see how this arc is going to turn out, because as of this moment, like I said this when Percival's whole powers were kind of revealed, I was afraid that this whole thing with Percival's power would be a cop-out in certain situations, that everyone just has to have faith in Percival so that he can overcome anything that comes their way. Thankfully, it's been used pretty much sparingly, and not to the degree where Percival is automatically like the strongest character in the world, because if hope was enough, power of friendship and stuff like that, he probably wouldn't have been able to solo these guys right now. But I'm glad that they're going in a direction where it seems like Sin is going to be ganged up on by the 4 Dark Talismans. And in this situation, like was mentioned, even if it's 4-on-4 and Percival has his powers, the rest are very injured. They don't have any real power to use right now to take on these Dark Talismans. But if Sin really is either Lancelot or, like some other people have been speculating, maybe Bond, then this would probably be the situation that they needed, and an excuse for Nakaba to reveal Sin's identity before reaching Leonis. Or maybe Sin will just play keep away with the Dark Talisman, just evading all their attacks however he can, which, I mean, he could do, just to keep teasing us, but I feel like now is the perfect opportunity to give us Sin's real identity, because with how that chapter ended, with Sin being cornered by 4 powerful knights, Sin will have to show his true powers now. But what did you guys think? What did you guys think of this whole chapter? Do you think the whole all is lost moment was a bit too quick for a single chapter? Did you like that Percival didn't just straight up one-shot these guys or injure them to the degree with his whole power-up? And also, how do you like the fact that Sin is basically being targeted by all 4 at once, and that we might get his identity? I keep saying this in every review, but we need to get Sin's identity now, because we're pretty much a year into the 4 Knights of the Apocalypse's run, and Sin was introduced in around chapter 4, and we really need to learn who this guy is, because this is one of the biggest things that the community has been talking about, and I really hope we get this identity reveal sooner rather than later. But with all that said and done, leave your thoughts and opinions and theories of this series and what's to come down below in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really does help. It also shows that you guys want me to continue doing 4 Knights of the Apocalypse content as this series comes out. And with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.